Today we're going to be mixing up some AJAX calls, some vanilla.js fetch calls, as well as hitting our own PHP file to pull from a list of countries that display in real time. So typing in information allows you to pull up this and select it, and it applies for both vanilla.js fetch as well as jQuery AJAX. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevDrawer. Today we're going to be going over how to use PHP, AJAX, as well as even vanilla.js fetch to be able to pull an auto-complete text box from, you can either do it from an API or do it from an external source. I'm actually just going to create a simple PHP file to pull from, but this project is mainly focusing on the AJAX part of it because it was a request that someone they wanted to learn more about, how to do AJAX and why you need it and stuff like that. So I figured AJAX and then fetch would be a good tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing, I've already got this server over here running. It's a local WAMP thing just so I can show you all the PHP results of it. But we need to create our file structure. So first thing I'm going to do is create this index.html, and then we're also going to create a new folder where our JavaScript is going to go, and then finally a new folder where our PHP is going to go. So inside of this PHP folder, we're going to create a new file, and I'm just going to call it functions.php. This is where our simple PHP is going to reside. That we're going to be pulling from. And then in here we're going to create a new file called initialize.js, and that file is going to be what controls our JavaScript. So this is the basic structure of the project. Before I get into any more of it, I just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you've not subscribed, definitely do that, because I'm trying to do these videos a little bit more often, and any ideas that you guys have would be greatly appreciated, because after doing it for a year, I'm kind of running out of ideas. So if you have ideas for new videos, let me know what they are. I actually do have some pretty big stuff coming up. I'm working on a course right now. I've had a few people that's requested me to do a course. So I'm actually going to be doing a course on database, PHP, JavaScript, HTML, Sass. It's going to be pretty much one course that covers a lot of the things that I usually do. So just keep a lookout for that. I'm hoping to be finished with the course in maybe just a month or two. So just be looking out for it. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started on this project. So let's go ahead and set up our HTML over here. And I'm just going to call it, let's see, like how to use AJAX or fetch. Okay, so it's going to be pretty simplistic. Essentially, we're going to have two fields. These two fields are going to be just a text box where someone types it in. It's going to autocomplete from a list of countries, and then they're going to be able to select on that country to be able to show the result inside of the text box. So basically, autocomplete, select it, and it adds it to the text box for you, so you don't have to type in everything. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and create our form fields, and this is going to be the label. So we're going to use both of them on the same page, and then the JavaScript is also going to have the AJAX jQuery version of it as well as the vanilla.js fetch version of it. So I'm going to be using all of it in tandem. It's not recommended for you to use all of it in tandem. I'm just kind of showing you, what the difference between each one would be, just in case you want to go one route versus the other. Okay, so I want to do an input, and it's going to be type text. Let's do this as AJAX country, and let's do a placeholder, and let's see, placeholder equals country name. Alright, so I'm going to copy this over. Let's add a few break tags in between them, and then this one, instead of using AJAX, it's going to use fetch, and this is going to be vanilla.js. And we can also change this AJAX country to, let's say, vanilla country. Then finally, we want to display them in a unordered list. So let's do UL, and then it's going to be country list. Okay, so we don't need to add anything into that right now. That's going to be populated through the JavaScript. But in order to use the jQuery AJAX version of it, I'm going to copy and paste the CDN for jQuery. So that's, you just copy it off the internet. And then I'm going to also put in a reference to our JavaScript that we have here. So this is going to be JS and init.js. Okay. Also, because I want to format this a little prettier, I'm going to take my country list and I'm just going to create a simple style for it. It's not going to have any other styling, but I just want to make it where this is a little bit nicer looking. So we're going to do country list, and let's do padding 0, margin 0, and then let's also do country list li, and we're going to do list type is going to be none, and then we want it to display block. Okay, so that should be sufficient enough. So if we come back over here and refresh, we have these two boxes. Right now they don't do anything, but let's open up the console log and see that it's not doing anything. So type in something, doesn't work. Okay, so we're going to focus on the AJAX one for now. jQuery. So let's switch over to our initialize.js, and this initialize.js is it's going to be used for both of them, but I'm going to split them up. So let's do the first one is going to be jQuery AJAX call for autocomplete. And in order to do that, we need to start with the document ready. So we're going to do document.ready and then function. And then inside of this function, we want to make it where it's doing as soon as someone clicks the button or starts typing here, we want it to do something. So in order to do that, we need to do an on key up event. So let's do this, and we named it AJAX country. And then we're going to do .on key up. And then we want to run this specific function for the key up abilities. For right now, let's just do console.log, and let's do this.val, just so we can show what we're actually producing here. So if we refresh this, type in a T. Okay, that's because it needs to have an ID here. So let's refresh that. So T, this.val is not a function, which that is fine. So we got our key up, AJAX country dot on key up, console log. That is because it did this. It doesn't need to be, it needs to be this. Sorry, I'm switching between JavaScript and vanilla.js. Sometimes I get them mixed up. So let's do T. All right, there we go. So now every time we type in something, it produces a result in our console log. All right. So now let's go ahead and create our AJAX. So we're going to do .ajax, and we want it to be type post because that's what we want to handle in the PHP. We don't want to pass any variables scripting wise to it, but we want it to send the data as a post. Okay, so then our URL is going to be our /source_functions.php. This is where you would have in your like your AJAX or your API call, or wherever you're actually getting your data from. That's what your URL would be. In this case, we're using on a local functions.php file. And then finally, we want to pass over the data, which is going to be, it looks like it's a get variable, but it's sending it as a post as part of the data. So we got this. Let's see, this.val again, because we want to send over that specific data. And then on success, we want to grab the response. So we're going to do response, and then let's just do for now like console log response, and that should give us a response. It's not going to do anything right now because it's blank. So if we start typing, nothing happens. But if we come over here and we do like an echo test, this will give us the word test as we type. So it's producing the word test. So essentially what this is doing is it's passing this variable that we're submitting from this AJAX call here, and it's passing it to the functions.php. If it's successful, then it's going to return whatever we tell it to return or echo out on the PHP side of it. So whenever we get ready to, we're going to actually use JSON to pass the information back to ourselves. So whenever we get there, we will manipulate that data, but on this side of it, we're going to have to pass it, as an actual JSON response. I have a list of countries because this is going to be like an autocomplete for countries. So I have this list of countries that I gathered. Is pretty much should cover every country available. Now let's take this name, and since we're passing it as a post, we want to do post search, because that is what we called it in our AJAX. So search equals whatever the value is. Let's go ahead and also create a array. We're going to call it match. This is going to be what gets sent back. So let's do echo JSON encode. So JSON encode, and then we're going to encode that match. So now we need to build up this array for match, because right now if we type anything in, it's going to return a blank JSON object for us. Okay, so now we need to make it where as they're typing these words, we'll start looking through. So if they type in an L, it's going to hit everything with an L, so pretty much like this line. If they type in an E, it's going to take away everything that's not LE, and it's going to produce just these two. If you type in LEB, it's just going to produce this one. So that's where we need to get it to go. So first, let's do a if statement, and we're going to do string length, and we're going to check to make sure that something's actually being sent over. And if something is being sent over, then we want to continue with our function. So let's do a for each, or a for loop. We're going to do I equals 0, and then if I is greater than, we're going to count how many, or less than, we're going to count how many countries there are in this array, and then we're going to do I++. So essentially we're assigning a key to each one of these values that's coming over from this list of countries, and we're just incrementing that I variable that we have set up right there. Let me see, what is this? Unexpected. Okay, so there's a comma there. This should not be a comma because it's a continuation of the code. Okay, so now let's do from array. Let's create this variable, and it's going to be equal to string to lower, because we want everything to be lowercase. That way it doesn't matter if they type it in lowercase or uppercase on their side of it. Whenever we're reading it, it's going to be lowercase. The array variable is also going to be lowercase, so everything coming through is going to be lower, just so we don't have to worry about their case versus our case. And let's do substring countries I 0 string length name. So essentially what this is doing, string length, need another comma here. Okay, so essentially what this is doing is we are creating this array that's basically looking through this as they type in, and it's comparing the substring. If the substring of the word that they sent over in the search is equal to the substring of the word that is inside of the array, which means that if there's 3 letters that are typed, it's going to search for the first 3 letters, and if they match, it's going to put them inside of this form array. Okay, so now we need to do if string to lower name equals from array. So basically looking to see if our name that's being sent over is equal to what we're gathering inside of this substring array, or the substring that we're creating, basically this list item. And if it does equal that, we want to do an array push match, and we're just going to be adding the countries with whatever key we've assigned it is going to be getting pushed over to it. Okay, so now we should be able to return our echo our JSON encode match, and then if we come back over here, refresh, and let's type in UNITED. So now you can see as you're typing in, it's starting to respond the way that we want it to. So now once we have it where we have this list of information that's being supplied to us, we need to go back to our initialize.js, and we're actually going to start listing this out inside of the unordered list rather than just a direct response. Okay, so first thing we need to do is make sure that that country list is always blank. So we're going to do country list, and then the HTML of that is just going to be equal to .html is just going to be equal to a blank, and then we're also going to show it because it's not going to be immediately visible. So let's do country list dot show. Okay, so now we have it where the HTML is cleared out, so every time they change the word, so let's say if you search for the United States first, it's going to show everything United States. We want to make sure if they go to change that, it's going to clear it out before re-adding all of the items back to it. Okay, so finally, since we're passing this response is a JSON string, we need to kind of get it to iterate as an array. So we're going to do each, and then we're going to convert that JSON. We're going to parse it, and that JSON parse response is going to give us kind of like an array structure. And then we're going to do item, and then here we want to append each one of those items to our search results. So let's do $, country list. Then we're going to do append, and we want to wrap it in an li, and then we're just going to pass in the item. So now we should have, when we go to refresh this, we type in U, there we go. So now we have all of the countries that are matching what we're typing in. So let's say United States. Okay, so if we click on this, what we want to happen is click it, it automatically finishes typing it out. So if it's longer like this one, you'd click on it, it would just append that text to here. So let's go ahead and create the functionality to do that. So after our AJAX call, we want to make it where it's also going to add a click event to the LIs. So we're going to do country dash lists, and then .on click. We want it to be specific to the li clicks. We're going to run this function, which will then add the variable. So we're going to do variable val equals this dot text, and then we want to take the thing that we're doing the key up on. We want to take that, and we're going to do val equals val. And then finally, we want to do the opposite of this, where as soon as you select something, it then hides this country list. So instead of show, we're going to do hide. So now if we refresh again, type in United States, click on this. Okay, well, it didn't do anything, so let's look at the code. Okay, so that needs to be a class. So now let's try that again. So United States, click, there we go. So it selects the one that we're looking at. So let's say if we type in something else, so Papua New Guinea. There you go. Alright, so that one is working. The AJAX is working fine. So now, I don't think we're going to need to modify this function's PHP again, so we're not going to worry about that. But a cool thing is that you don't have to reload the page. Since it's using AJAX or Fetch, you don't have to reload this page every single time you make a change over here. So let's say if we just remove that JSON encode and we go to start typing again, it still hits it. Obviously it's showing an error because it's not encoding anything, but it still hits that without us having to reload the page, because the AJAX is doing it behind the scenes, or in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, That way, any of these changes are being made over here. If we do make any changes to our initialize.js or an HTML file, then we would have to reload the page, but in this case, we don't need to because it just works. Okay, so let's start back over, and now we have this vanilla country. So vanilla JavaScript fetch is maybe kind of daunting for people who's never used it before. So I've used it a few times in some of my tutorials, but it's definitely something that you need to learn because the jQuery library is huge. Using vanilla.js just gives you the ability to make your code a lot slimmer. You don't have to worry about, most of the time, you don't have to worry about any kind of frameworks being imported in. You're just using JavaScript as the computer understands it. So there's no additional libraries or frameworks that you need to import in order to use vanilla.js. So I like vanilla.js. It took me a little while to actually get to the point where I used it a lot, but since I've started using it, it's definitely, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get used to it, it's a lot cooler than jQuery, and it also makes your websites a lot faster because you're not 100% reliant on a framework. Okay, so we are basically going to replicate what we have up here, but we are going to do it in vanilla.js. So there is no document ready. You also have the $ gone, so let's do the vanilla.js version of those. So instead of document.ready, we're going to do window.add event listener, and then this event listener, we're just going to have it come on load. And then we want to run a function, and inside of this function, so basically we've done this line. Now we need to do this line. So the whenever the vanilla country is key up, we want it to run kind of the same function. So let's do document.query selector, and we only have one on the page, so we're just going to add the ID, and it's called vanilla country, and then we're just going to do another add event listener, and that add event listener is going to be key up, and we're just going to run another function. So inside of this function, this is where we're going to be running our fetch command. So let me add my event here. I don't think we're going to be using the events, but I just like to always have the event accessible just in case I ever need it. But if I don't think in this code we actually use the events at all. But it's just what I do. You don't have to actually add the event there every single time. Okay, so fetch. So we're going to be running a fetch command in vanilla.js, and we're going to be passing that fetch command to source functions.php, and inside of this we want to run pretty much the same code. So the method is going to be post, and then we need to we're taking this from a form field, so I'm going to, just as a precaution, pass the headers of content type, just to make sure that the site itself knows what it's looking for. So our content type is going to be application /x www form URL encoded. That's basically just going to allow us to tell our server what kind of variable type we're sending over. I don't even know if it would be needed in this very specific instance, but it is good practice just to let it know, to make sure that the data that's being sent over is what the code on the other side of it is recognizing what it should be. So we're just going to set it up as a URL encoded coming from a form. And then finally, our body tag in this case is going to be search equals, and it's going to be this value. So it's very similar, and it's just a different way of writing it. There's different calls that you make, but for the most part, the functionality is very much the same. Okay, so now we're outside of our fetch. We need to make it where it does a then. So once we are able to hit that information, or hit that URL and send over the content that we want it to, we want it to return a response. So we're going to do return response, or function response, and then down here we're going to have it do a return response.text, just so whenever we actually get to the next section, it's going to be processing the correct information. So it's going to fetch it, and then it's going to do this, and then it's going to do this. So that's what these then commands come in. It's just basically saying when you get here, then do this, and then next do this. All right, so we're going to do function response, and inside of this we are going to start adding the information kind of the same way that we're doing here. So we want to take away the HTML. We also want to show it. So the way that you do that in Vanilla.js is first you got to declare your variable, and you can also use a constant here. I don't really care at this point. I think, you know, it's kind of a preference, but I mean const versus var. For something this simple, I don't think it really matters. So the newer way to do it is to use constant. So just keep that in mind whenever you're working with this. Depends on when you're watching it, how old the var is going to be. Okay, so let's do document.query selector again. And we're going to pass in this time country list, because we're going to be using the same list that we had on the AJAX. So we're going to be passing that in so it can be read there. And then we want to do country list dot inner HTML equals blank, and then country list dot style dot display equals that's not what I wanted to do, dot style dot display equals block. Okay, so now sometimes my thing automatically adds these things. I'm just going to keep them on there because I'm using it in other places. Sometimes it adds it automatically for me. Okay, so now we have it where the inner HTML is blanked out. The display is set to actually show it. So now we're going to do kind of the same thing. So right over here we have on this success function, we are going to run through it each, and we're going to do a JSON parse. This one's a little bit more simplified, so we're going to do JSON.parse response, and then we're going to do a for each function, and we're just going to pass the item, pass it as an item. And then we're going to create this list item. So we're going to do var li equals document.create element, and it's just going to be an li tag. Then it's going to be li inner HTML is going to equal to the item, and then we're going to just append it. So country list dot append child li. Okay, so now that's pretty much, let me undo that save so it doesn't reformat it for me. So now we should be able to see the fetch part of it. Alright, so it's saying that we have failed to execute of add event listener, so let's look at the code. So window.add event listener, that does not need to be its own function, and then that means we also need to close it out down here. Okay, I'm just going to add all of these so I won't have to do it later. Okay, so now let's reload. There we go. So if we type in, alright, there we go. We got it working for Vanilla.js as well. But if we click on it, it doesn't do what we want it to there. It adds it to the original one because remember we're using the same div and the same code for this, so it's still, you know, regardless of which one you're selecting, you can still add the code to both of them. So let's go ahead and start working on the other part of it. Alright, in order to make a click event like that, we're going to have to get outside of our window add event listener, and we're going to do document query selector, and we want to look through the country list, and we're going to do add event listener, and this is going to be a click event. So click, and then function. Alright, so this is going to give us our click, in this case we are going to be using the event, so we're going to pass in the e, and then if e.target.tag name is equal to li, we want it to run the following function. So let's do, let's create a, so right now we have it where up here it's doing this, so it's, you know, on click it's adding that. What I want it to do is, let's create a function that kind of replicates that. So let's come down here and do function select country, camel case. Okay, and then we're going to be passing in this val. So I'm going to have to go up there and take away this. So we can take this, copy and paste it down here because we want it to run on both functions. So let's just take this now, and we should be able to just pass select country val, and then here we should be able to do the same thing and do select country e.target.inner HTML. Okay, so then once we have the AJAX country vals being filled there, let's do document.query selector and hashtag vanilla country dot value equals val. Okay, so that should work for both. So if we refresh the screen and type in United States, let's click on the long one, and it fills it out for both of them. Alright, so let's do the same thing here. So let's say we type in Peru. Click, fills out Peru. Okay, so it's basically working now. So I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. It's a rather simple thing, but hopefully you understand a little bit more about AJAX and then the vanilla JS equivalent of it. Fetch is, like I said, it can be kind of complicated, but once you get into it, it's a lot easier to use. It's a lot more secured. You can also work with promises and stuff like that. That helps you kind of secure your data whenever it's coming across. It helps you be able to do more things with your data. But obviously, if you're used to jQuery, AJAX will be the best way for you to go about doing it. But this should give you two methods that you can learn from. But I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you learned something from it, give me a thumbs up. Or if you have questions, leave me a comment below and I try to respond to them as quickly as I can. But yeah, I think that's going to do it. Thank you for watching, and if you just stay with me for maybe a few more months, and I'll actually have a very in-depth course that I'm currently working on right now. It's going to be great, so just be on the lookout for it, and I'm actually probably going to run a promotion as soon as I start doing it, so just be on the lookout for that. It's going to be coming in the next few months, maybe the next few episodes I'll talk a little bit more about it, but for right now I think that's going to do it. I appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you later.